Welcome to I Said What I Said. I'm Brad 𝐸𝐿𝐵𝐿. That's Tyson Gentry. This is our NFL Week 12 reaction show. And Tyson, man, it's getting later into the season. These teams are who they are now. I mean, we just talked about teams can turn it around, this and that. Not anymore. We got the identity of teams across the league. How does that feel?
A month and a half left, dude. So it's time for one or two teams to get hot out of nowhere, but for the most part, we know exactly who these guys are. We're at a crazy college football weekend bled over into the NFL.
Yeah, and that's kind of how it is late in the year, right? You kind of think you know something, and both leagues, I guess, for lack of a better term, they always seem to throw a curveball at everybody. So we got a lot to discuss. We're going to talk about some certain things, the panic meter on different teams around the league, preview the big games coming up this weekend. Of course, there's some Thanksgiving action. But Tyson, you know what time it is, man. We got to give our thoughts on what just happened.
Just say it.
And it was a great day for us as Eagles fans. Great day for me as a Penn State alumnus when I'm watching Saquon Barkley on Sunday Night Football just run wild on the Los Angeles Rams. Sets a franchise record for rushing yards in the Eagles' history. Sets an NFL record for most scrimmage yards by a veteran with his new team. And it's just reminded me, Tyson, that fit matters in the NFL. And Saquon Barkley is a guy that after his rookie season, when he wins AP Rookie of the Year, injuries, poor offensive lines, poor weapons around him so that everybody can key on him when he's with the Giants. And he's kind of fallen out of favor, right? Like, oh, he's not as good as people thought he was, or he's kind of a bust. Some people were saying, which I thought was ridiculous. But then he goes to the Eagles. Then he goes to a real professional organization with a real offensive line and an organization and coaching staff that values what the strengths of this roster is and what these players are. And it's just how many times have we seen this every single time with players? They go to a different spot and then it works out, right? And it's just so important when we talk about players who are good and bad in this league to remind ourselves that fit is ultimately important. If you go to a bad organization, your chances from reaching your ceiling are exponentially lower. Like if Saquon Barkley finished out the rest of his career in the New York Giants, with the New York Giants, how would we be discussing him? Probably that he's disappointing. 1 year with the Eagles, Tyson. We're talking about this guy. He could win an MVP, be the first time that somebody's won it since Adrian Peterson did it. That's a non-quarterback. Could finish with over 2,000 yards, become the 8th person in history to do that. And that's because this is the right fit. That's because this is the right time for him to be a member of the Philadelphia Eagles. Matthew Stafford had to leave Detroit, goes and wins the Super Bowl. What are we talking about his career if he never does that? Phillip Rivers, what happens if he was on the Colts? What happens if Peyton Manning was on the Chargers? Eli Manning, what happens if he went to the Chargers, didn't go to the Giants? What would that franchise look like? We can go down the litany of players, fit, good franchises, bad franchises, and it just constantly reminds me as we're making our statements as fans, as analysts, as we watch the NFL, we make our statements, we have our opinions, we have our judgment on players, that we really have to look at it from a situational basis because really at the end of the day, it really matters who you play for.
And it also matters who you play for because, Brad, I don't know if you've paid attention, but the good teams are running the football this season like at a rate that's maybe a little higher than people were expecting, lighter boxes and all of those things. So that fit certainly matters. Stop me here when I get to what you would consider a bad team. I'm going to run through the rushing attempts per game here just to kind of boost your point a little further. Philadelphia is number 1. Pittsburgh is number 2. Detroit is 3. Green Bay is 4. Baltimore is 5. Washington is 6. Minnesota is 7. Miami is at 8. And I wouldn't be mad if that's where you stop me.
Right.
Then it goes Kansas City, San Francisco, New Orleans peaks in here at 11. That's the Chargers, Buffalo. Really, there's from my counting that I can see right here in the bottom half of the league with winning records in rush attempts per game is Houston, Denver, Atlanta, and Seattle. And Seattle is the only one outside of the they're 27th. Basically, all the good teams in the league are running the football, and they're doing that because they're able to find running backs and offensive lines that fit their scheme. But Brad might just say it this week. We've been doing rookie check-ins with these quarterbacks, and everywhere I look, it's Jaden Daniels, and it's Bo Nix, and it's Caleb Williams. Let's talk a little bit about these year 2 guys, okay? Because I'm old enough to remember, and I think you are too. Will Levis sucked, and Bryce Young sucked, and Anthony Richardson was the next big thing. And CJ Stroud, you might as well make his bust for him in Canton here. You can't bury some of these guys off of 1 year. Bryce Young looks like a different player. They didn't win the game against the Chiefs, but he put him in a position to. And if Xavier Leggett catches that bomb down the sideline that by the way, it was a perfect pass. They're in a position to beat the Kansas City Chiefs. Bryce Young's won 3 games, now we're having a different conversation. But Will Levis is another guy, much maligned, takes too many sacks, and that hasn't changed. But it's like, oh, it looks like Tarzan plays like Jane. This guy's never going to cut it. He's been the best out of these 4 since the start of October. His quarterback rating is 97.4, followed by Bryce Young, 83.5. CJ Stroud sits at 81.2, and then Anthony Richardson brings up the rear at 68.9. Yes, there's more tape on CJ Stroud, and that is certainly part of it. And maybe some of these offensive coordinators that we crown as the next big thing might not be quite as good as you thought. Bobby Slowick looks maybe a little in over his head once you lose Stephon Diggs so far this season, but it's an important reminder as we get to week 12, week 13, and we wrap up this rookie season for some of these guys. You can't, go back to the drawing board after this and say, well, Caleb Williams is probably never going to be as good as the other guys in this class, and look at how much work J.J. McCarthy and Michael Penix have to do to catch up to where Jaden Daniels and Bo Nix are. It's a long career in the NFL, and it's a long leash for these quarterbacks. Sure, Bryce Young might not be the future of the Carolina Panthers, but is this not better than trotting out Andy Dalton every weekend?
Tyson, I love it because we talk about this. We hate overreacting. It's one of the reasons why we started this show. We've always said you need 3 years to really make a definitive statement on these quarterbacks. And it used to be you would get that time in the NFL. It's not so much anymore. This is a fast-paced league, not just on the field, but off, right? With as much money, we have more and more impatient owners. It's not so much football guys who are owning these things. It's tech guys who want to see their returns, and they're business people who, they think that they can, put their stamp on it, David Tepper, and it has to do this thing this way. And no, I'm going to put my stamp on it. Whereas in the past, it was football guys. Well, we understand that you need time to develop. You need time to get reps. And these young guys aren't getting it anymore. And it's coming from analysts too. Like, it's coming from fans. Fans are always impatient. And it used to be that fans didn't really matter. But now with in the social media age, everything's just so amplified. It's supposed to be the organizations who are the ones who are like, no, hold on, let's be patient. And they're getting a little bit away from that. So I'm glad that we're seeing steps made by Will Levis, steps made by Bryce Young to take a step forward to be like, wait a minute, let's slow down a little bit on just saying that these guys suck. But on the flip side, we'll dive into CJ Stroud a little bit more, and I'll give my thoughts on that if we talk about the panic meter a little bit. But I agree with you. I mean, just because somebody has a good 6 games or a good year, that doesn't mean that they're the next John Elway. We got to see it over prolonged career. So no, I agree with you. I'm glad you brought that up.
Average played 2 games last year, and we were sold the next Cam Newton. I mean, and you said 3 years, so we're not going to sit here and say the guy sucks. But Brad, I think the guy sucks.
Yeah, just too many missed throws. I mean, they're layups. We got to see an improvement there. And again, he's a guy we said is a project. You got to play him. We'll see where he's at when it comes to that time. So we'll definitely see. But Tyson, let's move into a fun segment here, I think, where we'll talk about if we think some of these teams are in trouble.
Armchair Quarterback.
So let's get into the panic meter. And, it's like we said, we're freaking going into week 13. And these are who the teams are. Some of these teams have skated by. Some of these teams have winning records. Some of these teams are starting to crumble a little bit. So we'll dive into them. And first, I want to start with the Kansas City Chiefs because you mentioned it a little bit with Bryce Young and that throw to 𝐬𝐫𝐫𝐽. I watched this entire game. The Kansas City Chiefs should have lost to the Carolina Panthers.
Definitely.
Times the Panthers were in the red zone and settled for a field goal. They even scored 1 touchdown. They're winning that football game. And those are the growing pains you have with a young quarterback against an elite defensive coordinator, against a very good defense in the Kansas City Chiefs. And, you're going to hold people to field goals in those scenarios. But Tyson, this to me, again, was one that I'm looking at the Chiefs and I'm like, boy, I know we said that last year, but this defense isn't as good as it was last year. And that is the major concern that I have for the Chiefs.
Definitely. I sat here a week ago and said, Kansas City just continues to find ways to win, and it's less finding ways and more making plays to win. And that's certainly something that's going to anchor them as they continue through this process. But, Brad, I watched that whole game on Sunday, too. My girlfriend has Chuba Hubbard in her fantasy league, so I've unfortunately seen every Panthers game from start to finish all season long. But this is the first time to me where I'm looking at the Kansas City Chiefs and thinking, I don't know if 15 is enough. Like, I don't know, because the offense to me is boring and stagnant. Maybe when Pacheco comes back and maybe adds a little bit more juice running the football, we're going to sit here, week 17 and go, well, they're the favorites. They're sitting here at 16-1. and they're going to be just fine. I think that this is probably the most gettable they've been, and I think the rest of the AFC is up for the task in a way that maybe they haven't been before, where this Buffalo thing feels more legit to me than normal. I don't think anybody wants to see the Chargers or the Broncos walk into your building as a wild card team down the line here. And then in the AFC North, I think the Steelers and the Ravens both pose massive problems to the rest of the AFC. So I don't know if we're ranking this thing from 1 to 10, but whatever the number is, it's higher than it was a year ago. This is not your 2023 Philadelphia Eagles, like the wheels are falling off and they're done. But this doesn't feel after week 12 like a team that could win the Super Bowl. I'm more than open to being wrong on that, but as we sit here, I don't see it.
I know, and it's so hard to say the Chiefs don't have a chance, right? Because you have Mahomes and what they did last year. They went 3 straight road games. They didn't have the first round bye for the first time, and it was a difficult road, and they pulled it off. But that defense last year was legitimately insane, and maybe they can ramp it up. And Spags in big spots. It always feels like he has something dialed up. But Chris Jones is getting older. They don't have L'Jarius Sneed. You lost another linebacker. Willie Gay, I believe. He went to the Saints. I believe that's what they kept tranquil. It looks different, man. I mean, the ball teams are moving the ball on them. And early in the season, it was like, oh, this Chiefs defense, maybe they've taken another level. Sean Payton dissected them with this rookie QB, Bo Nix. You turn around and then Josh Allen, there were some points where the ball wasn't necessarily moving great if you're the Bills. But, I mean, let's be honest, it's Josh Allen putting on a Superman cape every week. I mean, so there are ways to beat the Bills in that offense. And then this past week, everybody in the world thought the Chiefs were going to blow out the Panthers, right? Bryce Young stinks. Spags is going to dial it up. Bryce Young might have had the best game of his career against that defense. And, this is a guy who's a number 1 overall pick, was the number 1 player out in high school, pedigree, Heisman winner, all of that stuff. So, he has a ceiling that can do stuff like this. But I think that was surprising to me, the way that Bryce Young was able to figure out those defenses, like the blitzes that Spags was down up that have
killed him on third down, dude.
Killed him on third down. And so that's the biggest concern to me. Now, Pacheco's going to be back. That's huge for the run game, gives them a different element. So I want to see how it looks after that. But, Tyson, the receivers aren't coming back. I mean, Juju Smith-Schuster, okay, not a game breaker. Yes, DeAndre Hopkins is there. There's a reason why 2 different teams now have moved on from him. So I'm kind of with you. The ceiling is still there to win the Super Bowl, but it's not Chiefs are going to be in there. Let's just pencil them in.
No, Gray's been balling. Let's give a little love.
He has. Let's get into the Commanders. This was the darling of the NFL early, right? Jaden Daniels is going to run away with the Rookie of the Year award. Cliff Kingsbury's turned the corner. Dan Quinn's changing the culture, and I do think they've done a good job. Tyson, they're coming back to earth a little bit. 3 straight losses. Offense is not pushing the ball down the field. They lose to a Dallas Cowboys team at home who was freaking on the scrap heap. I mean, it was embarrassing, the performance they had a couple weeks ago, for the past 2 weeks since Dak Prescott's gone down. And that's the performance that the Commanders showed. That surprised me. Where are you at with Washington?
So this is the thing with Washington, why I'm a little bit hesitant to be like, oh, this thing is over. Like the season, it was fun when you were 7-2, and now you're 7-5, and this thing's wrapped. They weren't supposed to be here, really, by most national pundits. Like we talked before the season, we kind of outlined the path for the Commanders to make the playoffs. I didn't think it was going to be, starting the season the way they did. But the next 2 weeks here are against the Tennessee Titans team and the New Orleans Saints team that you don't know what you're getting week to week. And so there's a chance that the Commanders are sitting here at 9-5 and with the playoffs essentially locked up for them, in which case you're not panicking at all. But the real problem with this, Jaden Daniels certainly seems like that rib injury is maybe a little bit bigger than they were leading on to this point. Cliff Kingsbury seems like maybe he's been figured out a little bit by the rest of the NFL once again. And they don't have the weapons either. Like it were kind of like Terry is awesome, and that 86-yard touchdown really it buoys his stats. And so you look at it and you go, he had 120 yards and a touchdown. Awesome. This is another week where he was essentially invisible until that point in the football game. It took some circus things for them to not win that game. But those are the ways that the Commanders have found ways to lose football games in the past. So I'm not panicked in the sense that the season's over, but as far as can Washington make a playoff run, I think that door is slowly closing.
Yeah, so that's the scary thing, right? So they have the late bye. They play the Titans and they go into the bye week. So they need that in a bad way. Not just the health of Jaden Daniels, but like you said, the scheme's starting to get cooked a little bit. Now, we knew this defense, they had a propensity to give up some yards and points. Like there was a couple of good games. So the Panthers game was an outlier. The Bears, they were doing a good job. Dan Quinn does always do that against rookie QBs. That's just the type of defense he runs. But, you're giving up points to the Steelers, and there should have been more points in that game. They gave up 28. The Eagles game, that was 26.
Before that.
Giant, yeah, give up 22 against the Giants, which is, God, just look at the numbers for the Giants. And then this week against the Cowboys, 34. Now, it was not 34 points from the onset. Like, it was a low-scoring game. But like you said, those are the types of things that can happen to the Commanders. And we think they're a good football team. Tyson, we're 1 year removed from them cleaning house. Like, are we sure? That's the other thing I say. So I do think there is some panic. They are home against the Titans. Like you said, that's a question mark game. Titans defense, they're improved year over year compared to what they were last year. So I think that will, again, pose some issues for Jaden Daniels if he's not going to push the ball down the field. This is 2 weeks in a row that he refused to throw the ball down the field. Is it the ribs? Is it the scheme? Are they taking throws away and he's just going checkdowns? Tyson, I know you know at LSU. I watched him at Arizona State. The guy doesn't really like to put the ball in harm's way, and sometimes that is a detriment. Like, you have to be able to take risks in this league. The windows are not wide open. Like, you're going to have to put some in tight windows. If he's scared to do that, that does hinder this offense. So I'm a little panicked about the Commanders if this thing starts getting out of hand.
Can we get some Ben Sinnott targets? You draft a guy to throw him the ball 3 times over the course of a season. This is ridiculous. Can we get some Luke McCaffrey love? You draft the guy top 100, he doesn't even see the field. It's been strange personnel usage, I think.
How about the San Francisco 49ers? Whoa, boy. So I got completely burned by the Purdy news. I was pretty surprised by that. So, I mean, one, you got to be pretty banged up for a quarterback to miss a game. I mean, we saw Justin Herbert. It looked like his ankle was 2 sizes too big, and he's still out there on a high ankle sprain in front of an offensive line that was a sieve at the time against a good defensive front, and he's out there. So when I saw the Purdy news, I was like, whoa, how bad has this injury been? Has he been playing on this? What's the scenario going forward, especially playing the Bills? That's where I think this thing is in major panic mode. You got Deebo Samuel freaking choking the long snapper and getting after the kicker like 3 weeks ago. That was just brushed under the rug. Like, what the hell? Are you kidding me? That's happened. Tyson, I mean, I don't want to put this into an Eagles thing. Imagine if that happens on the Eagles sideline. What are they saying about Sirianni? Yet it happens on the Shanahan sideline. There's nothing. The pre-snap penalties are out of control. I mean, they're awful. That's a direct reflection on coaching. I don't know this offense has taken a step back. Now, McCaffrey's tendonitis and his Achilles, that's huge. But this is a major red flag for me, not just for this year. Tyson, they're going to have to pay Brock Purdy all this luxury of all these players that they can bring in. That's gone now. Trent Williams is getting older. What happens to that offensive line when he's gone? Because he's been a boon for them. The defense taking a major step back. I think probably Shanahan owes Steve Wilkes an apology because he said it was his fault, basically, and they've gotten worse. So this is real panic mode for me with the Niners.
It was Steve Wilkes' fault that they couldn't hold a 10-point halftime lead in the Super Bowl from the offensive head coach. Neither here nor there. This game was over against the Green Bay Packers the first time Josh Jacobs touched a football. It's I think he got like 8 yards on the first carry, and it was just like, oh, this is wrapped. And the Packers go on to win the game by 28, which I think is the most the Niners have lost by in like 4 years, something crazy like that. Josh Jacobs is the first guy to go over 100 yards against the Niners in like 50 years, it feels like. But it's a little symptomatic of things that have been going on. I mean, they lose at home against the Seahawks, and you're kind of like, whatever. That's tough. It's a divisional game, and Geno makes 5 plays a game that make you think he'd win it. That Bucs game was really close, one that they pull off. They were close against the 49ers, or against the Cowboys earlier. They lose a close one to the Cardinals. They lose a close one to the Rams. So it's been a season where a ball bounces their way a few more times, and it feels like, they have 8 wins right now, and none of this is a problem. Are you panicked in the sense that you don't think this team can make the playoffs anymore? I don't think so, because the NFC West is so tight, and the 49ers have shown us that they can heat up. But when we talk about windows closing in the NFL really fast, this is what we mean, because this team, as currently constructed, cannot win a Super Bowl, where it felt like there wasn't a time, for the next 5 seasons with the guys they had on the roster, that they weren't going to at least be competing for one. The best rusher of the game was Jordan Mason.
Yeah. Playoffs, Tyson, I'll tell you. I'm not trying to overreact.
I think it's 11% right now is like their actual percentage chance, according to something I read on The Athletic earlier today. I think it might be a little higher than that, but the numbers would back that up.
It's not above 50. Like I don't. There's a real. I mean, so they lose to the Bills. I think they're eliminated. Let's just call it straight here. They're on the road Sunday Night Football against the Buffalo Bills. We don't know if Brock Purdy's going to play. If he's compromised, that makes it even worse. I mean, this defense. If that's the rushing you're going to give up against the Packers, with the dual threat ability of Josh Allen, you're in big trouble. Then you turn around after going out east. You play the Bears. Now we think the Bears not that good. That's a good defense. If it's Brandon Allen. Again, a compromised Brock Purdy, get after the passer, that's an issue. Then you play the Rams, who have always had your number with Sean McVay. Best case scenario I'm looking at is 2-1. I mean, you could be 1-2, you're done. I mean, there is big problems here if you're a San Francisco fan, I think. I think they missed the playoffs. This Tyson, we've seen under Shanahan go to the Super Bowl, come out of it, and miss the playoffs, and we just kind of figure it out. But I want to remind everybody, they got really lucky with Brock Purdy because they were paying Jimmy Garoppolo, wanted to get rid of him, just got super lucky with the Purdy thing. They were going to go to Lance. That wouldn't have worked out. Now, so then you got to reset on the rookie deal. Don't have that luxury anymore. So this could be scary, scary hours for the next few years for the Niners.
Super Bowl hangover is real, folks.
That it is. Let's close with this for this segment. CJ Stroud. Tyson touched on it a little bit, so I want to get my take here, but I want you to expand a little bit further because I know you were kind of looking at the numbers a little bit. I mean, when people see that Levis and Bryce Young have a better passer rating than CJ Stroud, I think it's hard for people to comprehend, but that's where we're at with him. So what's your panic meter on CJ Stroud?
My panic meter on CJ Stroud in general is pretty low. This is what happens to guys in the NFL when somebody gets an entire year of tape on you. It becomes harder, he took the league by storm. He had the best rookie quarterback season basically ever, so regression was imminent. But the problem with the Texans is the rest of the team. This feels like the wheels are off the train, and this thing is ending in the first round of the playoffs. I think that they're still going to win the division in my estimation. I don't think the Colts catch them. The Jaguars are essentially dead for those purposes. And who am I missing here? The Titans. They're right in the same window there as far as they don't have a shot to win this thing. So they're going to win the division, and they're going to host a playoff game, and they're going to welcome Bo Nix and Sean Payton into their home, and they're going to get housed. I don't think they run the football enough. You go out and you get Joe Mixon. I mentioned it earlier. They're 17th in rush attempts a game, and this is a team that hasn't been able to move the ball through the air. So running the football seems like maybe a nice remedy for that. The other part, Brad, is like at the beginning of the year, it was Nico Collins can stretch the field, and he's an excellent field stretcher, but he's schemed up to get the ball in other areas. The last 2 weeks since he's been back, it feels like, hey, let's see if we can get Nico to either break something crazy on a yards after catch situation or just send him on a go ball and throw this thing up. And that's not how CJ Stroud played at Ohio State. That's not how this Texans team played a year ago. We love D'Amico Ryans, but this feels like not a lost season because they're going to win 10 games. They're going to win the division. But for your AFC, championship hopes and title game appearance stuff, I think that's all but dead.
Yeah. And so the CJ Stroud thing, no panic for me. Now, this is something that was kind of built into our handicap of the Texans this year where everybody kind of thought this thing was going to just keep climbing and climbing for Stroud. And it's it's going to be a second year. Like he's not going to be Tom Brady. He's not going to be Peyton Manning in his prime. He's not going to be Aaron Rodgers in his prime. Like you said, there's now tape on him. There's now tape on Bobby Slowick, more tape with an offseason to prepare, understand tendencies, understand
counters. Been bad, dude. You want to talk about that real fast? Why is nobody talking about Bobby Slowick being bad?
Well, the thing that I think that really stood out to us was when Joe Mixon was dominating the game on the ground 2 weeks ago, and they refused to run the football to close it out.
They go quick, and then it's 4th and 1, and they go quick to the line of scrimmage and throw a deep ball to Nico.
That was strange. So I don't, he was praised because he's a PFF guy, by these analytics guys. Like, oh, but the EPA, they're passing the ball. It's all EPA. Well, you got to run the football too. Like there has to be some balance, especially with the young quarterback who's getting figured out, who's missing some throws. And that's the thing. I think, the CJ Stroud is going to find this level, right? Like he's still a good player, a great player potentially. I don't think anybody should be panicked about CJ Stroud. I'm kind of with you with the rest of the Texans though. Like there are some question marks that we're starting to have about this coaching staff, about how the roster's constructed. Maybe it's a little premature, man. I mean, we're 2 years away from people thinking that them trading the Will Anderson was the stupidest, trading up for Will Anderson was the stupidest thing ever because they're going to lose their first overall pick. I mean, let's not forget that, right? And, it was masked by great coaching from 𝐷𝐸𝐿 and CJ Stroud coming in and be a wonderkind. But, you can mask a lot of stuff, and all of a sudden the quarterback play regresses a little bit. Then we start seeing those warts a little bit more. I'm not worried about CJ Stroud to answer this question, but I think there is a little bit of panic with the Texans. They seem like they do have some more work to do before they become true AFC contenders.
Yeah, and Stroud is projected right now to finish with over 4,000 yards and 20 touchdowns, which might be disappointing for where you were at the beginning of the year. That's pretty good for a year two NFL quarterback.
Absolutely. Okay, Tyson, let's start looking ahead to some of the upcoming games. We got 3 games on Thanksgiving and, of course, the weekend matchups as well.
Marquee matchups.
And let's go for our first one to Dolphins-Packers. This is a Thursday night on Thanksgiving. So hopefully you guys are going to be able to stay up and watch this one. I know the turkey's going to be hitting, the stuffing's going to be hitting, whatever. We have a little fun episode that we're going to be releasing later talking about just our favorite Thanksgiving moments because we see something here. I got to admit, these rosters, primed to see some big plays. Jordan Love, you want to talk about a gunslinger, man. He's more Favre than Rodgers. He lets that thing eat. And then on the other side, Tua's looking like he's settled in. This offense is starting to hum a little bit. 𝐬𝐻𝐿's a real weapon. Tyreek Hill. Just something feels off in terms of his usage. But I think this could be a really good football game.
I think so, too. One thing to keep in mind, you can sound smart to your family as you're kind of finishing up your Thanksgiving feast and all that stuff. This is going to be the coldest game of the season. Temperature is expected to be right around 20 degrees at the time of kickoff. We know about these cold weather Dolphins. We know that the speed doesn't travel all the time. Waddle got off the milk carton with his biggest game maybe in 2 years. Last week he was awesome. Tua was able to sling that thing around. Still waiting on our Tyreek Hill breakout game. I think 𝐬𝐻𝐿 will be the key here for the Miami Dolphins. But Green Bay is just fine playing in this weather because Matt LaFleur is one of those guys that I'm just going to hand it off 40 times. And I don't care if it's 2 yards a carry for the first 30 because we are going to grind you down and we're going to beat you. And I think this is the way that ideally Matt LaFleur would like to play football because, Brad, they don't take underneath stuff with Jordan Love. And whether that's Jordan Love or Matt LaFleur is maybe a different question. But it is let's get it all at once. And if we don't, we're just going to run it the next 2 downs and probably pick up the first down. And that seems to be the way they want to play. Still rotating in different receivers. We still are as lost on who the alpha in this room is as we were before the season. Like Dobbs, I think had Wicks had 4 third-down conversions on one drive during this game, I believe. And again, I'm watching on the YouTube TV multi-box. I don't have the volume on, so could have only been 3, but it was over and over and over again. Christian Watson had a ball hit him in the face, and then Jaden Reed is confusing, to say the least. But I think this sets up really well for the way that Green Bay wants to play. Brad, what happens when you disrupt Tua's timing?
Yeah, it's tough. The offense looks like Skylar Thompson's the quarterback.
And what does Jeff Hafley love to do more than anything else?
Yeah, I mean, he's done a good job, Tyson. I mean, the turnovers they're producing early was something that they hadn't done. Now it's cooled off a little bit. I think they'll be looking to get back, especially in this weather. That's the key to me. If they can disrupt, like you're saying with Hafley, Packers should be able to win this football game. I think they do. It's the cold weather factor. Dolphins traveling up north, like you said. Josh Jacobs, this is their identity now, the Packers. They want to get under center. They want to run play action with Love. I think he's better in that aspect anyway. Take their shots, take their overneath stuff. That's how I see this Packers team playing for the rest of the year. They're just not going to sit back and gun and let Jordan Love just sit back. I mean, they're going to try to do some scheme in disguise with this run game. So in the play action pass. So I see a lot of that for the Packers here. I think that hurts the Dolphins, and I don't think the Dolphins going to be able to have the same success they had offensively the last 2 weeks. I'll just put that lightly against a better defense.
And don't look down, but there are 3 teams in the NFL that have a top 10 offense and defense by EPA, and the Green Bay Packers are one of them.
They're good football teams sliding under the radar. Tyson, this is the best matchup of the weekend, and of course it features our team because they can't stop losing. The Philadelphia Eagles against the Baltimore Ravens. Now, the Baltimore Ravens coming off their frustrating loss against the Pittsburgh Steelers to virtually dismantle the Chargers. The score wouldn't necessarily say dismantle, but it was a 2-score game late before the Chargers scored. Eagles go on the road, face a big test, Matt Stafford. Everybody's got questions about the secondary. They passed, but the Eagles are getting a little banged up. Saquon Barkley with an insane type of performance. Oh boy, let's break this one down. Where are you at?
Well, first of all, it's a treat to be able to watch the two best running teams in the NFL play against each other. This is why I think a lot of us fell in love with football, and then the passing kind of, keeps you hooked. And I think that's mainly where I'm going to go with this game. I'm not going to talk too much. Derrick Henry is Derrick Henry, and Lamar Jackson is Lamar Jackson. The Eagles' defense has been awesome. They're going to struggle to stop this Baltimore run game. They are susceptible on the ground. They lose Brandon Graham, who's maybe their best run defender on the edge. Anyways, that's a tough ask for a guy like 𝐬𝐮𝐬𝐫𝐢𝐛𝐤, a rookie, or Nolan Smith, or whoever else to kind of step in and fill that role. On the flip side, the Ravens' rush defense is much better than their passing defense, and kind of the narrative that I'm seeing right now early is like, well, if you make the Eagles throw the football, you might be able to win the football game. I think Philly destroys Baltimore if this becomes a passing football game, and it's A.J. Brown versus Nate Wiggins and Marlon Humphrey and Devontae Smith is healthy and all of those things. I think that this is going to be a much more balanced, and this is just physicality at its finest. This is two teams that want to meet you right where your level is. I think the Eagles have the edge in the offensive line, which carries them a long ways, but Lamar Jackson doesn't lose against the NFC. He's 23-1, 24-1 lifetime, and Daniel Jones is the guy who beat him. They got him out of here. I mean, he's just fine now. Jalen Hurts has only lost one game against the AFCs since 2022 when this kind of current version of the Eagles came up. This very well could be a Super Bowl matchup or a Super Bowl preview that we're getting here in Week 13.
Yeah, I agree. It's the big thing for the Eagles. Force Lamar Jackson to be a pocket passer. Do not let him get outside the pocket. Do not let him do the scampering. It's going to be huge on the Kobe Dean and that spiral. We like him getting a little bit more in the weeds for our Eagles stuff, but we like him running downhill and being a pass rusher. That's when he's at his best. I'm a little scared that he's not going to be able to do that in this one. Now, maybe they flip the roles with Zach Bond being the spy, a little bit more instinctual, having the Kobe Dean get downhill and pass rush. Maybe that's the play. I don't know. Fangio's been dialing it up recently.
You need Usain Bolt, basically, to keep Lamar Jackson in the pocket for 60 minutes.
Or do you just need the Steelers' defense, apparently? Because I guess they do it. Or you just need Tomlin on the side. I don't know what voodoo. You need Tomlin voodoo. That's what you need. But, I mean, that'll be their number one thing. Can you stop Derrick Henry? I mean, who really is? On the flip side, the Ravens have a good run defense, but this is the best rushing attack that they're going to face. And I think we're both going to see a good test for both units. I'm with you. You go one-on-one on the outside by plugging the box, trying to stop Saquon Barkley. This passing offense is going to eat for the Eagles. I know people think Hurts sucks. I mean, you're going to see some patented deep shot bombs. I mean, that's what you're going to see on Sunday Night Football. So this is a huge game. I'm a little nervous for it already, but I mean, the Eagles have banked up enough wins, Tyson, that I don't think Philly's going to burn down if they lose, which is not something we would have said at the beginning of the season.
Oh, they're focused on the Sixers right now, brother. You know that.
Chargers, Falcons. So Chargers coming off a loss against the Ravens. The Harbaugh Bowl didn't go Jim's way. It's unfortunate for him. Falcons coming off a bye. Interesting kind of scenario we're sitting on with the Falcons, right? Like it looked like they're going to run away with their division. Bucks are starting to get healthy. Baker's playing really good football. The Falcons, I still think, have an identity issue. They don't quite know if they're going to be physical and run the football, if they want to be finesse, chuck it around with Kirk and all those weapons. And this Chargers team is going to force you to do something. Whether you're going to show up for the fight or not, you're going to have some physicality, even if you're playing finesse. So that's what I'm looking at. Can the Falcons rise to the challenge and meet a physical football team at home?
I think this is a nightmare matchup for the Atlanta Falcons. I think that the Los Angeles Chargers are one of the teams in the league that, like, it's not a schedule loss for Atlanta. Like, if the offense is humming, they can pull this out. But Justin Herbert's going to crush the secondary. Like, he's just nobody throws incompletions against the Atlanta Falcons. Justin Herbert doesn't throw incompletions anyways, unless they're bouncing directly off Quentin Johnston's face or hands. It's 71.62% for the Atlanta Falcons defense giving up. And yes, J.K. Dobbins is hurt, and we haven't heard any news on that yet as of this recording, which typically means you're looking for a second and third opinion. Is probably not great. If it was a minor thing, we would have heard about it right away. So hopefully J.K. Gets back, but Atlanta has to handle this Chargers defense, and it's not something that I think they can do. I think that the Los Angeles Chargers find their footing again. And really, if Quentin Johnston catches that underneath route yesterday, we might be having a completely different conversation. Instead, he does not. The Ravens score, and then the whole thing's over.
The buy angle is interesting for me for the Falcons, right? Like, can Raheem Morris dial something up on defense? Can they find some cracks in the Chargers that they could exploit. It's going to be tough. Harbaugh is going to be prepared. They're, pre-scouting and all that stuff, and they're going to have a game plan ready. But, this is what you get paid for. This is your second time now, Raheem Morris, as a head coach. These are the games that you're supposed to elevate your team and win. Come off a bye, need it in the division race. I'm kind of with you, though. If the Falcons aren't physical, they're going to get run off the field. Like, that's just the way it's going to go, in my opinion. So that's the biggest thing I'm looking for, if they can compete in the line of scrimmage or not.
And we're not doing our gambling show this week, so just know, people, these are the two biggest underwagons in the NFL right now.
Cardinals, Vikings to close it out. You want to talk about a dud of a performance coming off a bye? What was that that Cardinals offensive performance? I mean, my boy Kyler Murray's over there now. My boy now. I like him because that video he had when he was eating pizza in New York. Good guy. Didn't expect that from him, but it throws like the worst interception of his career that went for a pick six, which was unfortunate. A really sloppy game. Now, I got to say, though, the defense from the Cardinals continues to be good under our old man, Johnny Gans. The Vikings, it still feels like they're just a house of cards, man. Like, we're all waiting for it to collapse. And maybe it's the Darnold thing. Maybe it's just, they're just not necessarily passing the eye test, even though Justin Jefferson's on there and Jordan Addison just had his best game of his career. I don't know. Where are you at with this game?
This will be fun. Minnesota seems like they found it again after some bumps in the road earlier. They've had a really good month. Almost lost to the Bears. Didn't lose to the Bears. That's important to note. Their defense is good, and the offense has been inconsistent. And it feels like maybe the other way around in Arizona, where the offense has been good, well, inconsistent as well. But this defense has certainly had some hiccups. They played well. I thought the Cardinals against Seattle, it was just a Mike McDonald, hey, like, I figured out how to call this defense thing, and that's tough. Like, Kyler Murray can beat everybody in the league to the edge besides Devon Witherspoon, which leads to that pick six and changes the entire course of the game. I'm expecting Justin Jefferson to get back on track. I'm expecting James Conner to get back on track. I think he had 7 carries for 8 yards or something ridiculous like that against Seattle. Paris Johnson did not have a good game. He's going to be under fire here against Flores and the boys in Minnesota. This is huge as far as seeding goes because, the Lions are, in my estimation right now, the best team in the NFL by maybe not the widest of margins or as wide as we thought with Philly coming on, but they're not even clear of the division yet. And Minnesota keeps continually putting pressure on them. And then Arizona needs this to get back, hopefully for them, in a tie for first place in the NFC West. So we mentioned that the season's kind of getting late and things starting to tighten up. This is a pseudo playoff game here for these two.
I think if the Vikings blitz Kyler Murray, they're going to be in trouble. I don't think you want to have man-on-man.
Yeah, it's tough.
And can Flores be patient? And because he's not, his ethos is blitz and be physical. If you can't generate the pressure up front, now they've done a good job of bringing guys in to generate that without blitzing. But he wants to get after you a little bit. He wants to overload that offensive line. But that's scary because Kyler Murray, he can get outside the pocket, and that's when he's at his best. He's running with his legs, throwing bombs down the field. So. If anything, I think we could see some points in this game. I'll just put it that way.
And one thing that nobody's bringing up about the Cardinals is they're the second best team in the league this year in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. That is crazy. Okay, well, that's going to do it for our show today. Appreciate you guys watching and listening. Like Tyson said, we are not going to be doing our gambling episodes this week. It's Thanksgiving. It was overlapping. We normally do it on Thursdays when we record and release it out. So we're going to take the week off. But that doesn't mean we're not going to be gambling on our own time. Are you crazy, Tyson? Where can they find the plays?
The Discord app, the link is in the bio. It's in the description. Go ahead, smash it. We'll let you write in. Group name, I said what I said. Tons of different channels in there. If you want to avoid your family and have a same-game parlay in the 10:30 game, the 2:30 game, and the 6:30 game, we will have that for you in the Discord. We've got people ripping stuff off. Something's going to change next year because the books keep getting cooked in this NFL thing. But we're taking advantage right now. So hop in there. Let us know what you're playing. Let's get rich on Thursday.
Yeah, that'd be good, man. Use Thanksgiving as a time to get your Christmas spending money. That's the goal here in our Discord this weekend. Like, subscribe, and share the show. Even though we're not doing the betting episodes coming out later in the week, we still are reacting to what happened in college football, CFP rankings. We got a ton of games on Friday, and so that's going to kind of lead into that, and we're going to have some fun stuff about the Thanksgiving moments that we like in the NFL. So that'll be a fun video for you guys to pay attention to and watch if you want to do that, if you want to watch a little quick video before you start eating. So stay subscribed, smash the like button on the way out, share it with a friend, share it with an enemy, share it with whoever you want. Doesn't matter to us. We will talk to you all later in the week. Happy Thanksgiving. Peace.